What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be making a tic-tac-toe game using HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. So first I'm going to show you what we're making. We'll just refresh this here. So you'll see, has that. You can enter a name. You can choose X or O. We'll choose X. You can start a new game. You can go. You can see it waits a little, shows its AI's turn, and then you can see we win. And it resets. Very basic, simple. You'll learn some JavaScript, some HTML, and let's get started. So we're going to start with our terminal, and we're just going to change our directory to the desktop, and then we're going to say mkdir to make a directory, and we'll call this tic-tac-toe, and then we'll change into that directory, and you can just press tab and it'll autocomplete. So then ls will show everything. So now we're going to say touch index.html. So now if we say code dot, because I'm using Visual Studio Code, it will open up Visual Studio Code. And you can see our index.html is here. It's empty. So before we do anything, I'm going to make a styles. Rename a styles.css, and then a app.js, and then also we're going to create a folder called images, and you can see I have this O and X over here, and I'm just going to drag that into here. So now we have our images. Awesome. So we're going to close these here, and I'm using live server. So you can see here, if I do an exclamation point using Emmet, it will generate our basic code here, and we'll start with the title being tic-tac-toe, and in here we'll just say h1 tic-tac-toe, save it, and we'll say go live, and it changed the port, and now you can see it worked. So we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to start by making a container. So saying dot container will give us a div with the class container. And then from here, we're going to do an h1, and then I'm going to say dot heading to give it a class of heading, and then a hash heading to give it an ID of heading. And in here, we'll say tic-tac-toe. And now if we look, we still have tic-tac-toe in there. Awesome. So now I'm going to create a class called new-game with an ID of the same thing. And here's where we're going to display the inputs for choosing your name and whether you're going to be X or O. So we're going to do an input and give it a class of name input and an ID of name. And the type is text. So awesome. And then we're going to add a placeholder, and that's going to be enter your name. So if we save this and look, you can see we have enter your name. Awesome. So now we're going to create another class. We'll call it X or O. And in here, we're going to do an input with the ID of X check, and the type is going to be checkbox. And then underneath it, we're going to do a label, and it's going to be for X check, matching the ID of the input. And then in here, we're going to do an image, and that source is going to be our images/x.png. So now if we save that, you can see it doesn't look too good right now, but that's just the X. It's kind of gross when I made it, but it'll work better when we put a background. So now you can see we have that. So I'm just going to copy this down to here, we're going to call this ocheck and change this to o.png, change o there, and now you can see we got both. So you can see this little check here, and when we add some CSS, we're going to make this look a lot nicer. Alright, so then after we do X or O, we're going to do a button with a class of new-game or start game. And we'll say new or start game. So now you can see we got our button, our X and our O's. Awesome. So now that we have that, we're going to create another div called game area and give it an ID of game area. And here we're going to do a class of board, and then within there we're going to say .row1, give it a class of row1, and then we're going to do C1 for column 1, and then another class, so saying dot again, no dash letter, to help us with the CSS. So now I'm just going to copy this over using Option Shift down and do C1, 2, and 3. These are also going to get an ID of 1, ID of 2, ID of 3. So now this is just going to be for knowing which box on the screen. So now we can do the same thing here, since we're going to have 3 rows. Change this to 2, change that to 3, and change these all down all the way up to 9 to give us 9 boxes. And there we have it. That is all the HTML that we're going to need. So, as you can see, it's not that much, and this is what we have. Obviously, it's not going to show anything because there's nothing in these divs. But if we wanted, we can just go down and we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now you can see we have all of that. Alright, so now we can get into some CSS. So under the title here, I'm going to say link, and then style sheet, and say styles.css. So now if we open up our styles.css, I'm going to put it next to this so you can see both. I'm going to say Command B to get rid of that sidebar. And now we can start our CSS. And we're going to start by saying body. To give it a background color, we're going to say background, and we're going to say linear gradient, and in here we're going to say to bottom, so starting at the top and going to the bottom. We're going to start with black and then go to this number, 537274, and then we're going to say no repeat, center, center, and then fixed. And then we're going to say font. Nope. Now we want a font for everything to be permanent marker. So now you can see we have this nice, so this font for the images is called permanent marker. So we'll go to Google Fonts to get that. But now you can see we have this nice gradient starting at the top and going to the bottom. And you can see if we say to top, it'll start the black down there and go up to our color. To left, same thing. So we're going to do to bottom. So next we need to go to fonts.google.com. I spelled that wrong. So we'll go here. We're going to search for permanent marker and then press the plus. And now you can see we can do this import, or we'll just stick with this for now, the link. So now copy that over, go to your index.html, and up here we're going to link it there. Get rid of that. So now we can say font family permanent marker sans serif, or cursive, sorry. So now if we go back, you can see these are all that same font. This is too, and these look better now on this background, the images. So we don't need that anymore. The next thing we want to do is our container, which is right here. And for that, we're going to say margin 0 auto to center it. I'm going to say padding of 25 pixels and display of flex. And then we're going to say align items center. And we're going to say flex direction column to stack everything on top of each other. So now you can see everything's on top of each other and it looks good. So the way that works is each div ends up being on top of the next. So this is the first item, then this is the next item. Alright, so next we're going to work on our heading, make that look good. So we're going to say dot heading, and we're going to say font size of 6 rem, which 1 rem is equal to 16 pixels, I believe. We're going to say text align center and color of white. And if we refresh, you can see we have that. Awesome. All right. Now we're going to say new game. And in here, we're going to say display contents. And that centers this input and the button. So now we'll do .name input for our inputting the name. And for this, we're going to say width of 30 view widths, which is just 30% of the view. And then we're going to say a height of 5 view heights, font size of 2 rem, and text align center. Now you can see this looks a lot nicer. Alright, now we're going to say for start game, we're going to give it a font family of permanent can't spell, marker, cursive. And then we're going to say a width of 20 view widths and a height of 5 view heights. And then we're going to give it a border radius of 10 pixels and a font size of 1.8 rem. So it's just a little smaller than the text of the input. And now you can see we have these. It's your name, start game, and obviously nothing's happening yet. And we'll add that JavaScript. Alright. So now I'm going to say .start game hover. So when we hover over, the cursor is going to become a pointer. And then the background color is going to be just that straight blue from the gradient. And now we're going to say transition. We're going to say the background color. So we're specifying what we want to transition. And then 1 second and ease. So now, if you look, it takes a little bit to cover it, and it eases into changing the color. And we're also going to change the color to white when it's hovered over. So perfect. All right. Next is going to be our input, and we're going to specify the type to be equal to checkbox. And so that's going to be these that we're working on now. So the type of checkbox, and we're going to say display none. So that will get rid of the actual checkboxes. So we'll go back again with it. So that's these little boxes here. When we add the display none, it gets rid of the text box. So next, we're going to say label to be padding of 10 pixels, and then position will be relative, our margin of 10 pixels, cursor pointer, and user select none. So now you can see when we hover over the X and O, we get the pointer. All right. So now when we do, we're going to say label before. So this is going to be a lot here. So we're going to say border radius of 50%, position absolute, margin left of 70 pixels, a margin top of 20 pixels, and then we're going to say left -5 pixels, width of 25 pixels, and a height of 25 pixels. Text align center, and then line height. It's not line height of 28 pixels, and then we're going to do a transition duration of 0.4 seconds, and the transform of scale 0. And we'll save that. And now nothing's happening yet. And that's okay. We'll get to that in a second. So now we're going to say label image, height 250 pixels, width 250 pixels, transition duration 0.2 seconds, and transform origin 50%, 50%. All right. And now these are smaller, excuse me. And now we're going to say checked plus label image. So when the input is checked, we're going to do a transform and scale it to 0.9 to make it a little bit smaller, and give it a z-index of -1. And now you can see when we click on it, it gets a little smaller. All right. And so now I missed. So before we do that, sorry. So there is more with the checked. So we're going to say checked plus label by itself. And we're going to say border color of white. And then checked plus label before, not backdrop, before. So here we're going to say content, and what we want this to be equal to is a check mark. So if we go up to here, show emojis and symbols, we can search for a check, and we can grab this here, and we'll put that in right there. And I deleted it. Put it in right there. Awesome. So now that's going to give us this check image for the content. And we're going to say background color of gray and transform scale 0 or 1. So now you can see we have our check mark when we click. Awesome. So now we've taken care of the checks with the labels. So now we're going to say when there's .no letter, so when these classes have no letter, our background is going to be none for that div. And then we're going to say .x added. And here you can see there is no x added, but we're going to add this class using JavaScript for when the person who's an x clicks on the box. So .x added, and this background is going to be a URL and then quotes. I'm going to say images/x.png. And then no repeat, center, center. And we're going to say important to make sure that it sticks when that class is on. And then a background size of cover and background size of 200 pixels, 200 pixels, and important again. So to show this, we'll start here and we'll just say x added. So add that class in. That's not working. Of course not. Gotta get rid of no letter. So now you can see it's there. It's trying, but since there's no issue. So we'll get back to that and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so now we're going to just copy this, go under, and change this to O and that to O. So next, we're going to add a .hidden class, and this display will be none when it's hidden, and visibility will be hidden. And then we're going to say for we're going to say .board, and in here we're going to do a display inline block. So now if we look, everything is centered perfectly for that. And now here we're going to say .row1, comma, .row2, and then .row3. And here we're going to say display flex. So what this will do, we'll put each thing next to each other, and now you can see we're getting somewhat of a box. So each row has display flex, so it's going to put each of the elements in each row, which are all these columns, next to each other. So now we're going to say .c1, .c2, and .c3, and here we're going to say width of 200 pixels, a height of 200 pixels, and a border of 1 pixel solid white. And now you can see we have our box. So now in the next part, we're going to add the JavaScript to make this all work like tic-tac-toe and actually be able to add those classes to make the images and be able to make the AI do their turn, and that will be in the next video.